There's a person in your life who seems completely fine. They've been through job losses, divorces, health scares, and when you ask how they're doing, they say, "I'm good." They fix the problem. They move on. They don't bring it up again. Are they actually okay? Or have they gotten so good at pretending that even they don't know the difference anymore? That person might be your parent, an older sibling, a coworker, or maybe, if you're honest with yourself, it's you. Picture this. It's a Tuesday afternoon in 1987. A kid comes home from school. The house is quiet. Both parents are gone. There's a key under the mat and a note on the fridge. Dinner's in the microwave. Lock the door. No one asked how school was. No one knew about the fight at recess. So the kid figures it out. Quietly. Alone. That kid grows up. Life throws real things at them. Grief, debt, burnout, loneliness. And every single time, something inside them says the same thing it always has. Figure it out, quietly, alone. That kid is now in their late 40s or 50s, and the world calls them Generation X. Gen X grew up in a very specific emotional climate, and that climate didn't just shape their childhood, it rewired the way they respond to pain. Divorce rates doubled. Both parents entered the workforce. The term latchkey kid wasn't an insult, it was just a description. Millions of children let themselves in after school and waited, sometimes for hours. This wasn't neglect in the traditional sense. Most of these parents loved their kids, but love and presence aren't the same thing. And when consistent emotional presence is missing, children don't fall apart. They adapt. The adaptation Gen X made was this: stop needing so much. Stop talking about the hard thing. Stop expecting comfort, because comfort is unpredictable, and unpredictable things are dangerous to rely on. What it feels like is a deep, quiet belief that your emotional needs are a burden, that talking about your struggles is weakness, that the world respects people who carry their weight in silence and pities everyone else. Here's the part that matters most. This doesn't feel like a belief, it feels like reality. After 40 decades of operating this way, it doesn't feel like a coping strategy, it feels like who you are. I don't need to talk about my feelings, I just deal with things. But underneath that, the nervous system never learned that asking for help is safe. So when something painful happens, and painful things keep happening, it doesn't reach out. It shuts down. It says other people have it worse. It says I'll be fine. It says nothing at all. On the outside, that looks like resilience. On the inside, it's exhaustion wearing a very convincing mask. Take a woman in her early 50s who loses a job she held for 15 years. She goes home, tells her partner, and by the next morning she's already updated her resume. She doesn't cry in front of anyone. She doesn't call a friend. She just moves to the next thing. People think she's remarkably strong, and she is. But 6 months later, she's waking up at 3 a.m. with a tightness in her chest she can't explain. She's snapping at people she loves. She's exhausted in a way that sleep doesn't fix. The grief never had anywhere to go, so it went inside. And grief that goes inside doesn't disappear. It becomes anxiety, irritability, a quiet, persistent feeling that something is wrong, even when everything looks fine. Pause here for a second. When was the last time someone asked how you were really doing, and you actually told them the truth? Not the fine version, the real one. For a lot of people, that question is almost impossible to answer, because the real version requires opening a door that's been locked for so long you've almost forgotten it's there. Here's the thing most conversations about Gen X miss entirely. They don't talk about their struggles, not because they don't feel them, but because they genuinely believe no one wants to hear it. Not as a paranoid thought, as a conclusion built from years of emotional expression going unmet, where "you're too sensitive" was a common phrase, where feelings were treated as inconveniences. When a child learns that their emotions make the adults around them uncomfortable, they get very good at making those emotions invisible. First for the adults, then out of habit, then because the invisibility becomes identity. That identity follows them into every relationship they ever have. It's why Gen X parents struggle to talk about emotions with their own kids, even when they desperately want to be different. It's why they carry impossible workloads without a word until they break. It's why they arrive at midlife with no idea who to call when things fall apart, or what they would even say. And here's the part that almost never gets named. Gen X was caught in the middle, after the boomers who took up enormous cultural space, before millennials and Gen Z who transformed how openly we talk about mental health. From above, they heard, "Don't be soft." From below, "Why don't you ever talk about your feelings?" They spent their adult lives quietly doing the work, getting none of the credit, sandwiched between generations when therapy wasn't mainstream, vulnerability wasn't language they were taught, and the struggles just kept accumulating, quietly, invisibly, alone. What would it cost to just say one true thing? Not everything, not the whole story, just one honest sentence about how things actually are. Not because vulnerability is comfortable, but because a life spent carrying everything alone is an exhausting life, and you have been carrying things that were never yours to carry alone in the first place. The nervous system is not fixed. It doesn't matter if you spent 40 years learning to lock the door. You can learn to open it, slowly, in small ways, telling one person one true thing, staying in a feeling for 30 more seconds before you fix it, letting yourself be helped even when you don't strictly need it. These aren't grand gestures, they're quiet repairs. And quiet repairs are exactly the kind of change someone who grew up alone in a quiet house can actually trust. If you grew up watching someone you loved disappear into their own competence and silence, a parent, a sibling, a partner who seemed invincible but somehow far away, I want you to understand something. They weren't withholding. They gave what they had, and what they had was shaped by what they were given, which was the message that needing people is a risk you shouldn't take. They loved you in the language they learned. That language just didn't have many words for hurt. And if you are that person, the one who figured it out quietly, alone, every single time, the fact that you survived everything without anyone noticing is not proof that you didn't need help. It's proof of how extraordinarily good you became at pretending you didn't. Somewhere inside you, behind years of competence and "I'm fine," there's still that kid in the quiet house, waiting for someone to ask. So I'm asking, how are you, really? You don't have to answer out loud, but you can. And for someone who learned very young that silence was the safest response, that's not nothing. That's everything.